Hello, my name is Taisha. I have been on Zepbound for 53 weeks, and I'm back to give you an update. All right, February 21st, 2025 was officially my 1 year mark. And last week, I did a 52-week update video, and I went into all the stats and how much weight I lost each month. So if you're interested in knowing that, after you finish this video, go to my video from last week because I break it down every month. I want to talk about something that is more important than the weight loss, the mindset that you have to adopt, that I had to adopt. So what I can do is I can tell you everything that worked for me, and then you can decide what bits of that you want to take, if any, to help you out on your journey. Flashback, I spent the majority of my life small. I did not struggle with weight. I had tendencies to overeat frequently, also known as binge eating, and it just kind of got worse over time. So I don't know what it feels like to go your whole life being larger than you're comfortable with. I cannot relate there. But what I can understand is from when I hit my 30s, early 30s, up until early last year, this roller coaster that I felt like I couldn't get off of it. Constantly, gaining, then losing, then gaining even more. And this cycle went on, yo-yoing up and down, trying different faddish diets, everything other than doing a permanent lifestyle change. Every time I did something, it was with this goal of getting to a specific weight or a specific size for a specific event. It was never, other than once, it was never just about my health, doing this because this is actually good for me. And I think that's really important. I had these different ailments, and a lot of these things that I struggled with were because of, a poor diet. And, that's really what it boiled down to, right? I didn't want to do what was necessary. I wanted the results without working for them. The time where it was actually important to me was in 2020. I had some procedures done, a biopsy of my liver, because at that time I had non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. I also had a lot of issues with, irritable bowel syndrome, and I had a colonoscopy and an endoscopy done. So after that procedure, I had internal bleeding, which led me to be in the hospital initially 7 days, and then I went home and then went back for another 3 days. That time was enough where I was just like, oh my God, I almost died. I can't do this. So I made these lifestyle changes, and it wasn't motivation. It was, oh my gosh, I almost died and my kids are not going to have a mother, That is what drove me, and I had a dietary change, and over time I eliminated meat, dairy, and I'm not saying that eating meat is unhealthy. I'm saying that I didn't want to eat meat anymore. I didn't need to consume any dairy because I was lactose intolerant. So every time I would have anything, whether it was anything with milk or cheese, anything dairy, I had a lot of issues. Sometimes constipation, sometimes the other end, definitely bloated. It just wasn't worth it. So, okay, I eliminated that. Then I eliminated meat. And so maybe it was the end of January or the end of December of 2020 where I decided, it was more about the animals for me. So that is when I became a vegan. My point is, it was a process. Not becoming a vegan, that was something that came later. But as far as the dietary changes, I didn't just go and eliminate everything right away. It was something I did over time. And then I got to a point where I wanted to start, I was losing weight, feeling a little bit better, but I didn't like what I saw when I looked in the mirror. So that's when I incorporated strength training, and I was doing that religiously, right? I had it set in my calendar every day, that was blocked off as my appointment. And I did that. I started off doing it Monday through Thursday, and I was there, like clockwork. And so as I started losing weight and things started getting better, I started kind of slowly but surely going back into old patterns, eating foods that weren't necessarily healthy. I did a lot of, because I was told, not by a doctor, but told by another person that I looked up to in that fitness, area, that I was not going to be able to build muscle eating a whole food plant-based diet. So I just kind of switched over. And if we're being honest, I use that as an excuse to go back to eating a lot of the things that I wanted to eat. I didn't make those dietary changes at that time because it was best for me. I went back to doing what I wanted to do. And, I had initially lost, I went from 216, I want to say I got down to 134, 132. Anyway, that was from 2020 to 2021. I gained back over time 54 pounds. So I was already headed back up to that 216. And I was finally able to get on Zepbound after jumping through hoops, which is why I also want to tell you, you have to advocate for yourself. And if you're seeing a doctor and they're not aligned with your goals and the things that you're trying to do to better your health, find another doctor. So anyway, on February 21st, that's when I got my first, Zepbound box and gave myself the injection. And that's the last time I remember actually feeling or desiring food or being hungry. I have not had any side effects at all. Not one. All of our bodies are different, right? We know that. But I really do believe that it has to do with the way that I went into it this time. On February 21st, I made the decision I am going to switch to a whole food plant-based diet. I was already a vegan, as I said, since the end of 2020, but I was in no way, shape, or form a healthy vegan. And all vegan foods are not healthy foods, right? They have a lot of ultra-processed things that mimic different things, and that's not necessarily the best thing. So I just wanted to do things differently. And I wanted to use the medication because from everything that I had seen about it, if your appetite is gone, and that was my struggle, that should make it easier in my mind. It should make it easier to make the right choices. So again, the right choices were not the ultra-processed foods that I had been eating in abundance, not drinking 2 lattes a day with all the syrups and sugars in them, not drinking 3 energy drinks a day, not drinking a half gallon of tea. These are the things that I'm saying. So having the fluid intake was not an issue. It was what I was drinking. So I have been drinking just water. Now, I will tell you that a week into it, I was like, oh, let me grab a sweet tea. I took a couple of sips. Didn't make me sick. It just didn't hit like it did before. I just didn't want it. So instead of trying to force it, I said, well, I guess we're not drinking tea right now. So I've been drinking water. I do get a little bit more water in the summertime. I'm usually outdoors more, sweating, but on average, I get a gallon of water a day. And that works for me. That's another thing. I'm sharing the things that work for me so you know that you could do it too if you want to. Okay? Let's see. I started on February 21st, 2024. Then in March 4th, I started my strength training journey. Strength training is my preferred form of movement, and I have incorporated walking. Out of the 53 weeks I've been on Zepbound, 51 of those weeks I've been consistently strength training. And now, as of today, I've just spent 7 straight weeks getting up every morning and walking for 30 minutes on my walking pad. Again, this was a gradual thing. This wasn't something that I just jumped into and I had it. It took me time. I focused on strength training first, and I got to that point where I was consistent, where it's like, no matter what's going on, no matter how I feel, I'm doing this. And that brings me to another point. I can count on more than two hands how many days I have felt like I don't want to do it. I don't feel like it. How I feel and what I do are two different things. Because in the past, that didn't get me anywhere. Any progress that I made, it would all be washed away in a matter of days. And I was determined for it not to be that way this time. So on days, and believe me, they come, where I don't feel like doing something, I tell myself, you only have to do 5 minutes. You can do this. And I've done it. This doesn't mean that there's never going to come a time where that doesn't make me do it, but it's going to have to be a good reason. And now I've almost been consistent for the working out for a year. So I don't want to mess that up now. And I know, again, in the past, what that led to. So I wanted to take this time to let you know that, and this is being optimistic, but also real, you are going to have days where you don't feel like it. You're going to have days where you didn't prepare something ahead of time. You're hungry in that moment. And the only thing around you are options that are not the best. Your job is to prevent that as much as possible. So if you have some things prepared or some things that are on hand that are easy, if that for you is a protein shake or something like that, that is better than nothing. That is better than running to McDonald's or any other, fast food spot and picking up something. You are in control of your choices. Lean into the medication. You could be someone that's like me that doesn't have an appetite, that doesn't feel the desire to eat. You still have to. You have to. Because if not, you're going to lose more than what you're trying to lose. And what I mean is muscle. I have talked about it at great length in previous videos, the amount of muscle that I lost in the beginning. And I'll just say 14 pounds. And I don't count the 14 pounds from the January DEXA scan of 2024 to the March one. I counted from when I started on February 21st until March 27th of 2024. 14 pounds of muscle and 4 pounds of fat. That's not what you want. You have to eat. And there's just no way of getting around it or dancing or tiptoeing or trying to sugarcoat it. And I'm not trying to make you feel bad. You have to eat. Get your calories in the best way you can. If you have to supplement, you have to supplement. And since I brought up supplements, the entire time, I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to add anything extra. I wanted to get used to doing things that were sustainable for me, right? And so I didn't want to take a whole bunch of pills and this concoction and that concoction, because first of all, that stuff can really add up. And if I didn't need it, I didn't want to take it. So in December, I had a DEXA scan done, and this was December of 2024, and I realized I had lost a little bit of muscle. Now, every time that I've had DEXA scans done, from the time I started my journey until now, I have lost fat with each one. The goal was not to continue to lose muscle. So when I saw that I had lost some, I only made one change. I did not change the amount of calories. I continued to shoot for 1,800 a day. I did not necessarily change the frequency or duration of my workouts. The only thing I did is I added creatine, and that was on December 12th, 2024. I added creatine, and when I went back in 5 weeks later, I had gained a pound of muscle and lost an additional pound of fat. So the fact that I track so much data makes it easier when I make changes to know, okay, this is what worked. So can you imagine if I had been taking creatine all along? Then you get to this stall point what do you do? Do you know what I mean? If you do too much stuff, you're not going to know what you need to do, what's working and what's not. So for me, taking the creatine is worth it. It doesn't matter what anyone else's experience has been. I know what my experience has been, and that is I have the 2 DEXA scans that I've had since starting on creatine. I've gained muscle, and that is eating a whole food plant-based diet as a vegan without supplementing my sources. Now, I would say the peanut butter powder, that's not whole food plant-based. That is definitely processed, but it's still a good form of protein. For me, it has less fat, less calories, and it has been beneficial. So I look at that, when I make those bowls, like someone else that's having a protein shake. That's just a way for me to get some protein in without all the fat and extra calories. So that's why that's my preferred way. I also eat a lot of chickpeas, tofu. These are my protein sources, beans. I do a lot of veggies. I make them in the air fryer. I make really easy meals. And what I'll start doing is, as long as there's interest, I will make videos showing you guys the things that I make. They're really easy, super simple, super quick. So if you're someone and you feel like, oh, I don't have time, you have time for these things. Because it's kind of like you prepare it, you put it in the air fryer, you do what you need to do until it's ready. And I can make myself something to eat faster than my husband can go get fast food and come back. So it's definitely doable. The important thing for you to remember is this is a chance. Being on this medication is the opportunity for you to get it right this time. It doesn't matter what has happened in the past. It doesn't matter how many times you've tried and didn't make it. This is the time. This is going to be your time. But you got to do this the right way. We got to get out of that diet culture, restrictive thinking, because that's not sustainable. Do you know what I mean? For me, eating this way is sustainable. It may not be that way for you. So even if you could incorporate a meal here and there, that's okay. Make sure you're drinking enough water. If you're someone who can't get past, like, I don't like water, then, add whatever you need to add to it, but don't overdo it. You know what I mean? Water is good for you. It's good for you. And it doesn't have to be something where you're just like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing. It's water. And we need it to survive. We need it. It's a need. So make sure you're getting it in. And if you just have to add a little bit over time, that's okay. Whatever you need to do, just work on slow and steady. Slow and steady. That is my biggest advice. If you can do strength training, I recommend that. Resistance training. You can do body weight stuff. You could do yoga. There's so many different forms of movement. Find something that you can enjoy, that you actually enjoy. Because on those days where you don't feel like doing anything, and I'm telling you, they will come. They will come. You'll be able to push through. If I was doing things that I absolutely hated, I would not be able to push myself through. So again, when I'm working out, moving my body, that mindset for me is not losing weight. So that brings me to another point. I'm sorry. Tracking calories. I am tracking to make sure that I'm getting enough. It is not about being restrictive. I have to make sure that I'm eating enough. That's important. I have to be able to sustain what I'm doing. Like, I'm strength training. I know I'm getting stronger. You know what I mean? I know now that I'm building muscle. So I've got to keep on doing these things. So maintenance, I get asked all the time. Maintenance for me is the same thing that I did to lose weight. However, I've increased my calories. Maintenance is doing the same thing. My body has gotten accustomed to that, working out regularly, walking daily. Something as simple as walking on the walking pad I'm not walking miles and miles and miles a day. I'm not running. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I'm telling you something as simple as walking for 30 minutes on a walking pad. And the rate that I do is 4 miles an hour. So I'm getting 2 miles a day in. And if I get to a point, not if, when I get to a point where I feel like it needs to be more challenging, then I would be like Mel and and get me a weight vest. All right, so hopefully you got something out of this. Again, if you want to see all the numbers and specifics, that's in previous videos. And on my Instagram, I post every single thing that I eat. And for now, I'm still doing, I'm putting the macronutrients and the calories and all of that. I'm not going to do that forever. I will always probably take the pictures of the meals and stuff, but I'm doing this breakdown so that you can see it because I already have the information. So at this point, it's just to help you so you can see. Okay, I don't restrict carbs. You'll see that. I'm also not diabetic, and I don't have any issues with any of those things. Now, I'm sure if I was eating Oreos all day, that would be a lot different than eating some chickpeas or something like that. So I don't feel like all carbs are created equal, and that's just how I feel about it. So find things that are sustainable. Do not get caught up in that number on the scale, and in slow and steady. And anytime you have questions, comments, concerns, put them in the comments. And I may not always answer right away. I don't spend 24/7 on YouTube. But when I get to them, I'll be able to answer them. I have live streams every Monday at 6 o'clock. I would love for you to join. That's a good time to interact with the rest of the community with questions. And I feel like they're pretty productive, but you have to come in and see for yourself. So just remember, this is your journey. Don't be too focused on the finish line where you're not focusing on what you're doing to get there. It's kind of like if you're jumping over hurdles, right? You're aware of that. If you're just looking at the finish line, you're going to trip over the hurdles. That's the best analogy I could come up with in this moment. But I hope you understand where I'm coming from. You've got this. It's going to take work. It's not easy. It's not easy. But it's worth it. You're worth it. So I want you to remember, we can share our journeys, but we should not compare them. Have a great day.